124 miles an hour. It would be the most expensive possible item on the earth. Yeah. Hey boys and girls, welcome to another episode of Commander Revs. Today, 2-month ownership review of the BMW K1600B 2019 version that I was waiting all half the winter anyway for the stop sale to get over with. Finally picked it up in mid-March. And of course the weather wasn't very good for first month there, and coronavirus kicks in. There's just so much going on. I haven't had a lot of time to ride it. Just rounded 500 miles on it in 2 months here, so that's pathetic. But it's late April. It's actually May 1st in Minnesota, so riding season's really going to kick in. Hey, bonus. 3 bonus video segments that I'm going to plug in right now. 3 installs that I just did. Watch this. Okay, so obviously the Aeroflow Wings, Aero Wings, are the biggest component here that I'm really excited to get out. So we're going to go for a ride, going to do a little review on the bike, the likes, the dislikes, and I'll just tell you right up front, the biggest dislike is the burble turbulent airflow that comes around this bike. The low windshield is pretty ineffective, especially for a taller guy. I'm not a monster, but I'm 6'1". A shorter 5'8", 5'9" guy would probably be cool with this. But from what I understand, these Aeroflow Aero Wings here is a big component. It's the air coming around the side of the fairing, and it just scoops right up in there and gets up in your face. So we're going to see. Supposedly this is like 50 to 80% of the battle. I do have a 7J Aeroc, however you say that, windshield coming. It's the highest one they make. It's got the lip at the top, so that's coming. I will have to do that review separately, but hopefully these wings here are going to be a big part of that. So let's get out there and see how they do.
Okay, the Aero wings are helpful, but by no means are they 80% of the solution. Most of my noise is coming from the top. When I tuck down to where I'm looking just over the windshield, everything quiets down. So taller windshield, definitely in order. These help. I'm definitely getting less wind coming around the sides. I get, the flare here scoops the air out. So I even have my air conditioning on with the little flapper valves open, so that's nice that they still work. Even with these on, you can do what you want with these. It's, slightly quieter. I'm not gonna say they're not helpful. They are. They're just not quite as helpful as I was led to believe. But I do have my windshield coming from 7J Rock or Rock, 7J Rock, I guess it is. I've heard some good stuff about those. The Aeroflow, the company that makes these wings, they're probably the other, they were the other contender. The Aeroflow is a little cheap, the Aeroflow is a little more expensive. But I am here for the 500-mile 2-month review. It's actually a little less than 2 months. I think I picked this up middle of March, I guess, and it's May 1st, so 6-week review. I thought I had about 500, but I guess I got 460 miles, so just shy of 500 miles. Good enough for a little short-term review here. Talk about the things I love about the bike, things I don't like so much. The engine is the #1 leading thing that I really love about this bike. Their inline 6 is pretty amazing, but yet it's still really sporty. One of the things I commented on my initial review when I brought this home was that the engine wasn't like phenomenally sporty and aggressive, and all the reviews I had heard, guys are just really impressed with how much oomph this thing has, and I kind of commented how maybe I was a little bit underwhelmed by it. Well, the reason for that was I was on a brand new motorcycle coming home from the dealership with it, and I at least want to put 100 miles on it without getting too aggressive RPM wise, and I generally tend to like to go to at least 500 before I think about redlining. I think the factory might say more like 800, 1,000, before you kind of like get up there towards redline. So, and I'm not going to argue with that. It's probably a good thing. I've maybe been to about 7,500 RPM. But the deal of what I'm getting at is here, above 5 is when this thing really lights up, and I did not do that coming home from the dealership. So I'm going to retract my underwhelmed opinion and say, yeah, this engine gets up and goes. For as big a bike as this thing is, for as much of a touring, bagger, it's a sporty bike compared to the Goldwing, which is probably a better touring bike. This is right up against that for touring, but it's so much fun to just cruise around, and you can carve some canyons with this thing. You can, get a little aggressive with it. When you're in dynamic, you're in road mode for the suspension, and that stiffens you up a little. You can select cruise mode on the suspension if you want to, with whether you're in dynamic or not. So yeah, you can play around with it, but It's a sporty bike too, so it's kind of like the best of both worlds. Another thing I love about this bike, I love the look of this bike. That's why I really landed on it. I've always liked the GTL, the GT. When this thing came out, I'm like, wow, when I'm ready to get back on a cruiser tour kind of thing, I will definitely consider this thing. It's just a gorgeous bike. I don't need the top case. My wife doesn't ride with me anymore, so I just love the styling on it. It's a great looking bike. The low windshield is part of the look of this bike, but unfortunately I am going to have to get a big one. And I've seen pictures of it with the taller windshield. It doesn't spoil the look of it, so looking forward to getting that just for a quieter, less buffety. I really like the mirrors. They're really far away, but they're big and they're effective. The trapezoidal kind of shape to them seems to, the road behind you kind of shows up right where you need it to or want it to. So yeah, and it's got this little black line. Probably can't see it, but there's a real thin line there. From there out, it's kind of a convex. I don't know how effective that is. I don't really necessarily think I'm taking advantage of that, but anyway, mirrors are solid. I like the LED lighting. The TFT, I don't know if it's a TFT technically, but if it is, it's early first generation TFT. They should have upgraded that on this thing. Maybe in the 15-16 genre of that bike, they could have updated the display on this thing. But the whiz wheel that controls the nav and the multi-function display there is a little cumbersome. I'm getting used to it. Took me 3 attempts to figure out how to program the radio. The radio's pretty much worthless, but it doesn't matter. I've got the Bluetooth into the speakers in my helmet, so who listens to speakers on their bike? Harley guys with no helmet putzing around at 50 maybe. Yeah, it works, but I love the footboards on this thing. I am 6'1", so I kind of like stretching out on this thing. The height from the seat to the foot pegs is a little lower than I kind of would like, but again, it's a bagger. They lowered the frame on the back end of this thing. So here's an example of what I was talking about, the engine. When you get above 5, this thing just lights up. The sound of this thing is like almost like Formula One racer, and then at 6 it kind of like kicks in another level. So yeah, there's nothing lacking in this engine. On a bike like this, it's actually more than you would expect or need or really even want. Any more power on this thing would kind of almost be a little ridiculous. So very pleased with the engine. I think they nailed the engine for this bike. I've always liked the K1600, and like I said, I've never really ridden one till I owned this one, and the bagger had the look, and this engine has always been pretty impressive. So yeah, I'm liking that. What else do I like? The quick shifter, smooth as butter. The thing that's amazing about it is you can upshift with any amount of power, not even any power, as long as you just don't have the throttle at idle. You can't upshift when she's all the way off. But when you are downshifting, oddly, on the earlier iterations of quick shifters, you really couldn't downshift when you were getting on the throttle. So here I'm in 4th. I'm going to go down to 3 while I'm giving her the beans. And it didn't complain one bit. My Aprilia will do that too, and I was really impressed with that. Well, this thing is that, and maybe even a smidge smoother than the Aprilia, but they're both really good quick shifters. The Aprilia is a phenomenal quick shifter. This thing is as well, possibly a little even smoother. But so engine, transmission, quick shifter, they kind of all go together. But really impressed with that. I think I mentioned the radio, worthless. Who cares? I paid for it, and It's weight that doesn't need to be on the bike. They probably should have just left it off. I love the adjustable windshield. It needs a higher, taller windshield, but it's just doesn't, you don't want to be all the way up to the top. If you were in rain, maybe you try to keep the rain off you, but really about right there, that's where you want to be. A couple 3 inches up off of bottom, just for the front end design to still be all dialed in with the windshield. And that's why I'm getting the tall windshield, so I'll only have to dial up a little bit and still be looking over the top. I really like the way the bags latch, solid. They're not electronic. They are electronic locking. It has central locking. I really like that. Keyless fob for that, and obviously running the bike. Suspension on this thing, like right now I'm in dynamic, so by default I'm in road suspension. Dynamic for the fuel mapping for the engine. So the 3 modes: dynamic, rain, and road. And when you're in cruise suspension on this thing, like I say, regardless what mode you're in over here, so I'll go to road mode. That'll keep me in cruise on the suspension. Yeah, cruise suspension is just like sitting on your Barca Lounger. It's so soft. So if you were just out dialing up the miles on this thing, that's on the highway, that's where you want to be. This thing is just so soft. It's almost too soft. I hardly ever ride in it because when I'm out just putzing around, I generally tend to kind of want to do the dynamic for the throttle response and the engine mapping, and that gives me that road suspension, which is a little stiffer, a little more responsive, a little less comfy, but better for carving around. It's just a little stiffer. It's still comfy, but I could see being in that cruise mode when you're on a long haul. You're putting a long 10-12 hour day on this thing. Why not? Of course you would. Something again I don't really care for in the TFT or in the MF multifunction display here is I can't put enough things up here at once. There's plenty of room for stuff to be displayed there, but they kind of force you to select what you want in a particular field, like tire pressure, a stopwatch, how much travel time, the date, voltage, oil level, average speed going the other direction here, range, that's what I like to leave it on, consumption showing my mileage. Took me a little while to set up how to get the digital speedometer there too, but you just, I think I might even had to watch a YouTube video to figure that out. The manual wasn't real clear on that. Down on the freeway here. It's the other thing, if you're just cruising around, I got my feet up, I don't feel like I'm too lazy to drop my foot because I want to downshift and get around this guy. Boom! I'm in 6th gear! It's like, this thing's just got so much torque. It pulls like a tractor in 6th gear at highway speed. So, like the cruise control, it works like all Beamers do. The only thing I don't like is it doesn't pop up with the speed that you've set your cruise control to. It just says set in amber right there. First off, I don't like amber lights when things are normal. Most people don't. So they could have just put the green circle like they do on cars or whatever, but you just got to sit and click up and down and kind of see where you settle out on your speedometer. That seems a little weird for BMW being a top-end bike. I really like the fuel gauge and the engine temp over here. They're that bar graph kind of thing. Those are cool. Really big gear shift indicator. That's a good thing. The speedometer is like a lot of Beamers, a little bit small on the font. No big deal. But you have this, and plus you can put it up there. If you want something else displayed there, you can put the speedo up there. So it has hill. I have H right there because I have my hill assist, hill start assist on. That's selectable. You could go in the menu and turn that off. It's that's where if you're on a hill and you press the brake firmly, it'll turn on green, and that holds the bike. It's like a parking brake for being on a hill. You don't have to sit there with your hand on the brake the whole time to keep from rolling back. I haven't really used it. I haven't really been on a steep hill, but on a big heavy bike, I see the value in that. I like the port that's right here. When I get into the colder weather, I'm going to plug my heated gear in there. Right now I just have my phone charger plugged in there with kind of a cheesy little wire. I'm not going to probably stay with that setup. I don't really need my phone to, well, if I want to select a song, or when I get a call, I kind of like to see who's calling me. But so I wouldn't mind having a second one of these. Maybe they make a T. So I really like the footboards. I like stretching out. I'm tall, so when I mentioned the short height between the seat and the pegs, I meant to go on to say I'm thinking about getting a taller seat for this. Right now I'm sitting on an Airhawk, which I really like. So that's kind of got me up a little higher. I'm not hating it. The Airhawk is comfy. I was thinking maybe something kind of way out at the top corner of the footboards, just to kind of really hang out with your feet. Maybe someday I'll modify that or come up with something. Who knows? I've looked, there really isn't anything out there. Ilium Works has something, but it's hugely expensive, and it replaces the footboards. It's really meant more for the other K-bikes that don't have footboards, that you can get a nice they're a beautiful highway peg, but they're meant to go for the engine guard setup, not the footboard setup. So that's not the way to go with this bike. Ilium Works also has a heel shifter. Their stuff is really nice, but wow, it's expensive. It's kind of almost like they're trying to compete with Wunderlich to be the most expensive possible item on the earth. I don't know where they're from. They're not a German company. I just went Wunderlich and rolled into my Klaus Gewürne, whatever. But I always like heel shifters. I might get that. I think it's $270 or some ridiculous thing, but seems like a slick deal. Another thing I really like about this bike, I love it when a motorcycle will track down the road without, like with the cruise on. I mean, it doesn't tend to want to go left or right. It's just a little emphasis to the left or the right with your body, and the bike goes right. I'm not saying I ride no-handed. Who would do that, right? But when you want it, maybe just a little switch flip or these things, your hands are off the bike for just a half a second. It's stable. It hands off for how long now? It's a beautiful thing. Stability. This, of course, you guys know, maybe you don't, the Grand America version of the Bagger has the top case back there, and they've got this, that bike limited to like 105 miles an hour or whatever it is. That top bag apparently causes some instability, undesirable negative effects with that bag. I have heard both that this bike also has a limit of 125, and I've heard other people say no, that's not true, and other people have said it's so yes, it is true, so much so that they actually have a governor on the bike. I would really doubt there's a governor on the bike, and prove me, hey, I may be wrong on that, but here's the deal. I've had this bike up to not me. No, I know a guy who has had this bike. Well, no, I know a guy whose neighbor's uncle's best friend's cousin has had this bike up to 125 miles an hour. And what he told me, his experience was that, wow, that's way faster than you need to be even thinking about going on this bike. There is so much frontal area on this thing. It is scooping so much air. And that guy had the windshield all the way down, and he was tucked all the way down. But you're pushing so much air, it's like a big plow up there. It got squirrely, man. The front end was becoming unweighted, and it was getting unstable, and so that guy backed off on the throttle right about 124 miles an hour. So was there a governor that kicked in? I don't know. Couldn't really prove it one way or the other. So well, that was a hoot. So yeah, you know what? If you want to go that fast, get on something else. There's no reason to go that fast on this bike, but the engine is there for the fun, lower speed stuff, for accelerating, cornering, coming out of corners. Okay, so that was my stability rant. I actually haven't done a lot of highway riding because it suckers you into just sitting there at a stable speed, cruising along, whether the cruise control's on or not. But I'm still braking. Hey, I'm almost at 500. So this is officially a 500 mile review now. But I have, I'm a big proponent of keeping the throttle moving. Up and down, back and forth, shifting up and down, throttle up and down, because at least for the first 500-600 miles, I don't think you're going to hurt anything from doing it right from the get-go. But I have always been a proponent of trying to, I'm down to 5 now, there, down to 4, on the throttle, off the throttle. I'm still playing that game with this bike, so I have been not doing a lot of just out on the freeway cruising. So I am doing some of that today, though. And since I am doing just a little of that, I'm going to pop menu and go to cruise on my suspension. Hopefully you can see that. Oh yeah. So I am doing the long haul, sit back, cushy suspension. The other thing I do have is I have this set for one rider and luggage. I think it's just that's basically the height of the suspension, and I think just being taller, I tend to like that a little better. Cruising. Man, it's comfortable. Again, big old BMW brakes. They're very effective. Running lights down there, all LED. Probably going to have to get a protector. They make an aftermarket. In fact, Aeroflow, the same company that makes the little wings here. There's Aeroflow. They make a few other goodies. One of them is a protector. You break this glass, and wow, it's like the whole assembly is huge money to replace that. So you guy probably should get a protector, aftermarket protector thing for that. So here's a quick look at her. Let's get back out on the road, and just coming up on 500 miles, so it's official 500 mile review. Okay, here we are back at the shop. There's my 500 mile review, officially out just kind of cruising for the first time on the freeway. Put a couple miles on it. I mean, maybe 100 miles today just out farting around, but it was still cool. Obviously, I love the bike. The horn is really easy to, you just like lift your thumb, it's right there. I like car horns on big bikes. A little wimpy horn is pretty lame on a cruiser or a touring bike. So yeah, that was one last little thing there. I love the bike.
It's great. I'm going to have to get a high seat for it, I think, eventually. Definitely the high windshield's coming. These things help a lot. I can see a shorter guy saying, oh, they do a wonderful job, because they do. The side wind coming around is mostly gone now. If it's hot out, you still can do this. That's the beauty of it. So the new windshield coming is going to be a win. So yeah, well, thanks for watching. Next time you see me, I'll probably be throwing the windshield on, do a quick review to see how that improved my buffet / wind noise issue. It's mostly a noise issue. So thanks for watching. Hit subscribe if you want. We'll see you next time. Thanks.